A major development in the war with Iran. Just minutes ago, U.S. sources confirmed to CNN that an American fighter jet has been shot down over Iran. And a desperate and very dangerous search and rescue mission for the crew is now underway.
3 U.S. sources are confirming earlier Iranian state media reports. Those reports included these images you're seeing right here on the screen of what it claimed were a downed U.S. Force fighter jet. CNN has reached out to U.S. Central Command for comment. I want to bring in CNN's Jim Sciutto, who is in Tel Aviv, Israel, and Elena Treen at the White House. Jim, to kick it off with you, what more are you learning?
U.S. officials now confirming that a U.S. fighter jet was shot down over Iranian territory and that a search and rescue operation has been lost and, to our knowledge, remains underway. In fact, there have been images circulating online, geolocated by CNN, which are consistent with a search and rescue operation. They show both fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters, including one video that shows the refueling of 2 helicopters, and that's notable because they would be refueled to stay in the air, which would indicate that they've been in the air for some time conducting these search and rescue operations. A serious, arguably one of the most serious circumstances in wartime is to have U.S. forces behind enemy lines, shot down behind enemy lines, and to then launch a search and rescue operation, which, though they are trained for, these crews are positioned for these operations and trained for these operations, those operations themselves are dangerous as well because they put additional U.S. forces over Iranian territory in wartime, and where it's already been demonstrated that Iran maintains the capability to threaten U.S. aircraft, having shot down one. So those forces will be operating with great care, but also with immediacy to get those pilots safely and in time. We should note that Iranian state TV, as it earlier reported the shoot down, was exhorting viewers to turn in pilots if they were to find them before U.S. forces do. So one might say was something of a race going on, right, between Iranian authorities and forces and U.S. forces to get those pilots to safety.
All right, Jim Sciutto, thank you. We hope that they are safe and that they are rescued. We appreciate it. Let's go now to Elena Treen at the White House. Elena, what are you hearing there?
Yeah, look, so this is reporting from, 3 U.S. officials, to my colleague Haley Britsky, Kevin Liptak, and I, as Jim laid out, that a U.S. fighter jet has been shot down over Iran and search and rescue is underway. I will note that at this point, there is very little information we actually know about what is happening related to this. We do not know where the plane went down. We do not know the status of the crew on board, and we are not hearing any official word from the U.S. military or the White House at this moment, though of course we do know that they are monitoring this very closely, and obviously this is a very sensitive thing, and so they're being very careful with what they're going to be putting out publicly. Now, I will say one thing we have been hearing, of course, is repeatedly I'm hearing in my conversations with people in that building behind me, you have to be careful with what you're hearing from the Iranian state media, which of course has been sharing a lot of videos and images this morning of this. But what we did hear as well from the state-run Tasman agency, they said that the search for any missing crew had, quote, so far been unsuccessful. Now, I do want to say, part of the reason this is so notable is because this incident does mark the first time that a U.S. aircraft has been shot down over Iran since the beginning of this conflict. For context, we do know that, near the beginning of the war, 3 F-15s were mistakenly shot down in a friendly fighter incident by Kuwaiti air defenses, but this is the first time we're seeing them shot down by enemy fire. Now, again, we are waiting to hear what the White House will ultimately say on this, and similarly with the military. But it is, a huge blow for this Trump administration, in particular at a time when you've heard the president try to project confidence about completely diminishing Iran's military capabilities. And so we'll keep you posted as we learn more on this. Wolf and Pam.
We're getting this new image coming into CNN right now. This is an image published by the Iranian state media, and it appears to show a damaged fighter jet ejection seat on the ground. Look at that. A CNN analysis of this image indicates this seat is consistent with a model used in a U.S. F-15E fighter jet. The seat, which separates from the aircrew during the ejection process, appears to have sustained damage, with a portion of its back structure missing. And we're also learning that President Trump has been briefed on this situation. Pamela.
All right, Wolf, let's bring in retired Lieutenant Colonel Amy McGrath. She's a former Marine combat fighter pilot, and we should note she's also running as a Democrat for Senate in Kentucky. Thanks for coming on. First off, what is your immediate reaction to this news that a U.S. fighter jet has been shot down in Iran? You just saw that picture there of the ejected seat. There's a search underway for the aircraft's crew.
Well, my immediate response is, or thought is, really thinking of the families of this of the aircrew here. Look, I have always felt like Iran it's a very big country. It's not the same as Iraq or Afghanistan. The administration has said that they have complete air supremacy and air superiority, and that the president has said, well, we've decimated their surface-to-air missile capabilities, but a lot of us who flew fighter jets and know this space, shall we say, are very worried that that is not the case. And I think that this sort of just shows that. This F-15 was apparently shot down, and, we're hopefully the ongoing operations will get this aircrew out of here, but I'm very worried.
Can you give us a little sense of the sort of training these fighter pilots get for situations like this?
Sure. We have the best training in the world for our fighter pilots. We all go through survival school, whether you're in the Air Force or the Marine Corps or the Navy, or even the Army. If you're going to be flying over enemy territory, you're going to go through survival school, in which you're trained on how to survive, but also how to survive a prisoner of war situation. So if you are alive after the ejection, which, the ejection itself is a very violent thing to happen to the body. So, hopefully these crew made it through the ejection. But if you are alive, you're trained on how to communicate to the search and rescue forces that are going to be coming. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we pride ourselves in military aviation. We got friends out there that are going to come find us. And so even if you're not alive, we have mechanisms to, like beacons, shall we say, to find these the remains. So hopefully we will be able to get these aircrew back. But we are trained, and right now that's about as much as I can say, because it is a sensitive ongoing operation that you talked about earlier.
To the extent you can, tell us about the sort of defenses these crew members have on their person when they eject from an aircraft over enemy territory.
Well, that's a great question. When, in an F-15E, it's much like the aircraft that I flew, and the F-18 Delta. We have a pilot and a weapons systems officer. And, when you eject, you don't have a ton of weaponry. You might have your radio to be able to call and have friendly forces try to find you. And you may have a pistol on you, and maybe a knife, and that's about it. I mean, there's just not a lot of room in the cockpit for extra stuff. So I would say another thing to think about here is, in ejecting over a place like Iran right now, think about the fact that we don't really know if the population there is for us or against us. And that makes it difficult. I mean, we had sort of this same thing in Iraq and Afghanistan as well. If you're going to be picked up by somebody who is going to turn you over to the Iranian, forces that are going to use you and capture you, or is the population happy that you're there and want to help you? That we don't know. And so anybody that gets shot down over that space is having to deal with that uncertainty.
It's interesting, Colonel. An anchor for Iran's official Fars news agency said a reward was being offered for anyone capturing a, quote, enemy pilot or pilots. How concerning is that for you?
Well, it's to be expected, right? And, anytime you are trained to go into enemy territory, that sort of thing is going to happen. The government there is probably going to do everything it can to find those pilots and weapons systems officer, and they'll do anything. They'll influence the population to try to turn them over. And again, we just don't know the status of that. The other thing is, where did this happen within Iran? Iran is a huge area, and people have to understand that Iran is the size, landmass of Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan combined. So you're talking a long way. If this happened, somewhere in the middle of Iran, then it's going to be very hard to sustain operations to try to find these aircrew. But if it happened closer to the coast, perhaps that's a better indication of our forces being able to stay on scene, shall we say, and try to get the folks back.